The first warning came as a strange vibration in the soil beneath the alien city of Kerith. It was too deep, too steady, to be natural. Alien sensors tried to explain it as a tectonic shift, but the readings were wrong. The hum was not from the planet, it was from orbit. Something had arrived. Lady Varelia stood on the balcony of her crystal palace, watching the sky turn from violet to blood orange. Her long silver hair flowed behind her as ships began to descend. She wore a robe of woven star silk and bore the proud markings of the Elvery Nobelza race, known for their flawless genetic heritage. Varelia was not just a leader. She was a symbol of perfection. She hated anything less than perfect, and she especially hated humans. Their unstable, weak blood, unrefined genes, she once said. At the Senate gathering, they multiply like bacteria and bring war wherever they go. So when her advisors reported that a human ship had crashed into the no-entry zone of Elvari land, she laughed. Let the mudblood crawl through our forests. Nature will deal with him. But nature didn't. 3 days later, her best scout team was missing. Their last transmission had only 2 words: he's here. The human's name was Corvin. A former soldier, he had no special rank, no noble blood, and no alien tech. Just instincts, scars, and a strange habit of surviving everything. His escape pod had landed in the wild zone full of beasts, acid rain, and Elvery patrols. But he didn't hide. He moved through their lands like a ghost. One by one, he studied the Elvery's patrol patterns. He learnt their tech, broke their codes, and avoided traps meant for smarter creatures. His one goal, survival. And somehow, survival made him dangerous. Back in the palace, Varelia's patience thinned. He's just a human. Why are my best forces struggling? Her chief general, a tall Elvari named Soren, frowned. He's different. He doesn't fight like us. He doesn't retreat. It's like he knows what we'll do before we do it. Varelia scoffed. Then I'll meet him myself. She arrived at the war zone in a golden hovercraft, escorted by elite guards. The jungle below hissed with danger, but Varelia showed no fear. She stood tall, scanning the forest. That's when the shot came. It wasn't aimed to kill, it was a message. Her guards dropped instantly, stunned but alive. And there, from the trees, Corvin stepped out, no armor, no weapons in hand. Just cold, sharp eyes and a calm expression. I don't want war, he said. But if you keep coming, I won't run. Varelia's gaze locked with his. She expected fear. What she saw, instead, was fire. She narrowed her eyes. You have no pedigree, no rank. You are nothing. Why do you fight like a prince? Corvin didn't answer. He simply turned and walked away, vanishing into the jungle. That silence cut her deeper than any insult. Later that night, as her guards tended to wounds and her ship hovered in retreat, Varelia sat in silence. She thought about that humans. Eyes that stare, no fear, no ego, just strength, silent strength. Her world, where bloodline meant everything, had no place for people like Corvin. Yet, she couldn't stop thinking about him. He should have been broken, she whispered to herself. But instead, he stood like he belonged here. What she didn't know was that this was just the beginning. A larger threat was coming, one that would soon force Varelia and Corvin into an alliance that neither wanted. An enemy from the stars, one that didn't care about bloodlines or genetics. Just extinction. And in that dark future, only the strong would survive. Not the purest, not the nobles, but perhaps the unworthy. 2 days after her encounter with the human, Lady Varelia sat alone in her private chamber, staring at a holoscreen. It showed tactical data maps, patrol routes, supply chains, all marked in red. Red meant failure. Red meant her forces were losing control of the southern wild zones, and all of it pointed to one man. Corvan. A human with no noble blood, no resources, and no backup. Yet somehow, he moved through the forest like he owned it. Varelia had seen him with her own eyes, and she still couldn't explain it. Why did he feel like a force of nature? Suddenly, a sharp tone echoed through her room. A security alert. She pressed a button, and a new screen opened. This time, it wasn't about Corm, it was worse. A massive object had entered the system unidentified, fast, and silent. It wasn't Elvari, it wasn't human, it wasn't anything known to them, and it was heading toward Kareth. Varelia stood slowly. "Get me General Soren now." Moments later, Soren appeared, his face pale and tense. "My lady, it's not just one ship, it's a fleet. Over 50 war cruisers, they're scanning for life." Varelia's heart sank. "Invaders, we believe so. And they're not answering any hails. They destroyed our outer defense beacons in seconds. No demands, no warning." Across the jungle, Corvin watched the sky burn. He had hacked into one of the Elvari drones days ago, just in case. Now that drone was showing him something terrifying: dark clouds of metal, swallowing satellites like flies. He had seen things like this before, in his old days, and he knew what it meant. "They're not here to talk," he muttered. "They're here to clean." Back in the palace, panic spread. Cities went dark, communications failed. The Elvari High Council began evacuating noble families. 2 hidden vaults, but Varelia didn't move. Instead, she gave one order: find the human. Her advisors were shocked. "My lady, you want to speak to him?" "After everything, he knows war," she said quietly. "He sees what we do not. If we want to survive, we may need him." It didn't take long. Corvin didn't hide when Varelia's guards entered the jungle again. They found him waiting in a cave, sharpening a blade made from Elvari steel. He looked up calm, as ever. "You're early," he said. "I figured you'd only come after the first city burned." Varelia stepped forward. She wore armor Narial warplate with glowing runes, but even that couldn't mask her hesitation. "Come not to beg," she said, "but to offer." "Terms." Corvin stood slowly. "Terms. A truce," she said. "You help us fight. We share resources, tech, anything you need." He raised an eyebrow. "I don't need anything then." "Do it to save lives," she added. Corvin stared at her. The same woman who called him unworthy now asked for his help. She didn't say sorry. She didn't admit she was wrong. But he saw it in her eyes. The fear, the uncertainty, the pride cracked after a long silence. He nodded. "Fine, but I don't take orders." She nodded back. "And I don't give them." 2 outsiders. That night, they worked side by side in an old military outpost hidden beneath the trees. Corvin shared tactics from past wars: how to break a fleet from the ground, how to fight when you're outnumbered, how to use fear as a weapon. Varelia listened. Really listened. For the first time, she didn't interrupt. She didn't correct him. She asked questions. "Why do you fight like that?" She asked once. He shrugged. "Because I never had the luxury not to." She looked away, ashamed. Her life had been one of comfort, bloodline, and ceremony. His was forged in dirt and fire. And yet, somehow, he was the better warrior. The next day, they launched the first joint mission: Elvari soldiers under human strategy, and it worked. 3 enemy drones fell, then a scout ship, and finally, they hacked one of the invaders' communication relays. Corvin decoded it. "They're not here for land," he said. "They're here to erase all impure DNA from the system. Anyone who doesn't meet their genetic code is ... eliminated." Varelia froze. "Even us." He nodded. "Especially you." Her voice shook. "But we're perfect." "Not to them." By nightfall, the sky above Kareth glowed red. The first city fell, but the last message from the ground said something strange. 1 human and 1 elf held the breach for 2 hours. Enemy advance halted. Civilian escape successful. Those 2 were Corvin and Varelia, and somewhere in the firelight, between orders and exhaustion, the noblewoman and the outcast began to see each other, not as enemies, but as equals. Asterisk smoke still clung to Varelia's skin as she stepped off the transport. Her armor was cracked. Her white hair, once spotless, was now scorched and tangled. But her eyes burned brighter than ever. Corvin followed close. Behind, his jacket was torn, and his side bled through the cloth. He didn't complain, he never did. Pain was normal to him like breathing. They had just saved 2,000 Elvari civilians by holding off an entire strike unit. The cost had been high, but the victory was real. And for the first time in her life, Virelia was not being praised for her bloodline, but for her actions. Inside the underground command shelter, Elvari commanders stood in silence as Virelia walked past them side by side with Corvin. Some looked away, others glared. One noble muttered under his breath, "She walks with a mutt." Virelia stopped. She turned to face him. "Say it louder." The noble, a man of high rank, straightened. "He has no lineage, no known ancestry. He is unworthy of." She cut him off. "He is the only reason we're still breathing." She looked around at the other officers. "If bloodlines matter more to you than survival, then step aside, because the war doesn't care who your ancestors were, only who you are now." Nobody answered. And for the first time, the Elvari began to listen. Later that night, Virelia stood outside, staring at the stars. Her hands trembled, but not from fear. From change, Corvin approached, quiet as always. He handed her a cup of ration tea. "You fought well today," she smiled softly. "You sound surprised." "I'm not," he said. "I saw it in your eyes. Back in the jungle, the fire." She looked down. "I never had to fight like this before. My people always told me I was born to lead, not bleed." "Now you're doing both," he said. She chuckled. "Do all humans speak in riddles?" "No," Corvin replied. "Only the ones who survive." They sat in silence for a while. Then she asked, "Why do you trust me?" After everything I said about humans, he didn't answer right away. He just watched the wind move through the trees. Finally, he said, "Because you changed." She looked at him. "That simple?" "No," he said. "It's never simple, but it's enough." The war pressed on Corvin, and Virelia began leading joint missions together. Elvari and human tactics were combined. Victory after victory followed, hard fought but meaningful. In the process, they learned more about each other. She learned that Corvin had no parents, raised on colony streets. Recruited into Earth's army as a teenager, he learned that she'd been raised in luxury, forced into political grooming, and denied the chance to make her own choices. Both had scars, just different kinds, and both, in their own way, were tired of being defined by others. One evening, after a brutal night ambush, Corvin was injured badly. His leg was torn by enemy shrapnel. Medics tried, but human biology was different. Elvari tech couldn't fix him completely. Virelia refused to leave his side. She worked through the night, modifying alien healing machines. She ignored protocol. She rewrote laws of her station, and in the end, it worked. He woke up, coughing, half laughing. "Didn't think a highborn would get her hands dirty for me." She smiled. "You're more than you think." "So are you," he said. Days turned. 2 weeks. The war turned uglier, but their bond grew stronger. They fought like one mind. They moved like one will, and behind closed doors, something even deeper began to grow. Not just respect, not just trust, but something neither of them had expected. One night, after a quiet mission, Virelia sat with Corvin under the shattered sky dome of an old observatory. The stars were dim. The war had stripped the planet of much beauty. "I used to come here as a child," she said. "I'd pretend to see the future in the stars." He nodded. "What did you see?" She looked at him. "You." He turned to her, caught off guard. "You," she repeated. "Not you, exactly, but someone like you. Someone who didn't care about bloodlines. Someone who looked at me as I am. Not what I was born to be." He leaned closer. "What do you want to be?" She whispered, "Free." In that moment, the fire between them was no longer just war, it was connection, it was belonging, it was destiny. The next morning, they stood before the final battle preparations. A new plan, a bold strike, one that would decide everything. Virelia turned to Corvin. "When this is over, if we survive, will you stay?" He smiled. Try and make me leave. What neither of them knew was that fate had already chosen them for something far more permanent. Something growing. Inside her, the battle ended with fire in the skies and smoke over the forest. The enemy's last forward base was destroyed. Thanks to the combined human-Elvari strike team led by Corvin and Varelia, for the first time in months, there was silence, not the silence of defeat, but the silence that comes when war finally stops to breathe. But inside that peace, something had changed. Something very personal. Varelia stood in front of the mirror. In her private quarters, her hands trembled slightly. Not from fear, but from the small silver device blinking in her hand. It was a medical scanner, a basic one, but the result it showed was not basic. Life detected. Her breath caught in her throat. It couldn't be, not now, not during reconstruction, not after all they had been through yet. She already knew, she had known for days. The way her body felt, the strange warmth in her chest. The instinct that something deep inside her had shifted. She was pregnant, and the child growing inside her was half human. Corvin sat on the edge of a ruined transport, cleaning his knife. He liked doing things with his hands. It kept his mind clear. Varelia approached quietly. He looked up and smiled. "You're walking like something's bothering you," he said. She didn't speak right away. She just sat beside him, quiet. Finally, she said, "I have something to tell you." His smile faded slightly. "What is it?" She met his eyes. "I'm carrying your child." Corvin stared at her for a long time. His face didn't move, no emotion, just silence. Then slowly, he blinked. "Say that again," she did, and this time, softer. "You're going to be a father." He looked away, his jaw clenched. Varelia reached for his hand. "Are you angry?" "No," he said. "Not angry, just surprised. I never thought I'd survive long enough for something like this, and I never thought it would come from someone like you, someone like me." He turned to her. "Royal elite, the one who once called me nothing." She lowered her gaze. "I was wrong." They sat in silence again, this time longer. Then Corvin spoke. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know," she admitted. "If the Alvari Council finds out, they'll demand I end the pregnancy. They see humans as inferior. And you?" he asked. She looked at him, strong and certain now. "I see this child as a miracle." For the next few weeks, they kept the pregnancy secret. Only a few trusted medics knew, and even they swore to keep silent. The growing life inside Varelia was unique. No one had ever seen a successful human-Elvari hybrid before. It wasn't just forbidden, it was impossible until now. And yet each scan showed healthy growth, strong heartbeat, fast development, a perfect mix of both species. The child was real, and already powerful. Outside, the world was healing. The alien invaders had been driven back into deep space. The Elvari began rebuilding their cities, and small groups of human survivors were accepted into temporary colonies. But peace didn't mean safety. Not for Varelia, not for Corvin, not for the unborn child. Whispers were spreading. Council spies had noted her medical visits. A few nobles began to ask questions. Too many questions. One day, General Serin approached her in private. "My lady," he said carefully, "are the rumors true?" "What rumors?" "That you carry something unnatural." She stared at him, cold and calm. "And if I do," his voice dropped, "they'll come for it, the elders, the royal bloodlines, they won't let such a child live." She turned away. "Then they'll have to go through me." Later that night, she told Corvin everything. He wasn't shocked. "I knew this day would come. We may have to run," she said. He nodded. "I'll protect you. Both of you." She looked at him. "I don't want to run forever." "Then we don't," he said. "We make them see what this child means. Not a threat, a future." And slowly she began to change. Not just as a mother, but as a leader. She stopped hiding. She started speaking quietly at first, then publicly, about peace, about new blood, about strength not found in bloodlines, but in unity. Some Elvari hated it, some humans didn't believe her, but others began to hope. One afternoon, as she walked through a garden rebuilt from the ruins of war, a small Unworthy girl tugged at her robe. "Is it true?" the child asked. "That you'll have a baby who's part human?" Varelia knelt. "Yes." The girl smiled. "Can I play with them someday?" Varelia felt tears rise in her eyes. She hugged the child softly. "Yes, someday." And as the sun set behind the half-broken towers of Kerith, Corvin stood beside her. His hand gently rested on her stomach. A new life was coming, born from war, forged in fire, half noble, half wild, and stronger than both. The council, Hall of Kerith, had never been this divided. Noble voices rose in protest. Elders banged ceremonial staffs against the marble floor. Ancient Elvari symbols of purity and heritage hung high above them, but now, their meanings were being questioned. At the center of it all stood Lady Virelia, pregnant, unapologetic, and standing beside her Corvan, the human they once called Unworthy. "This is madness," shouted Elder Vornas, slamming a document onto the table. "A hybrid child, born of a human. It goes against every genetic law we have upheld for 10,000 years." "Those laws were written in fear," Varelia replied calmly. "And we are no longer afraid." Gasps rippled through the chamber. No Elvari leader had ever spoken such words. Another elder stood. "You speak of peace, but you bring chaos. What if this child is dangerous?" Corvin stepped forward, his voice steady. "Then train it, guide it, teach it to protect your people, instead of making it an enemy." "You have no place here, human," snapped Vornas. Varelia stepped in. "Front of Corvan, he has more place here than half of you. He bled for our cities, he fought for our survival. And I chose him." That silence that followed was louder than the shouts had been. Outside the chamber, word of the meeting spread fast. Some Elvari were horrified, others were quietly hopeful. Among the lower castes and soldiers, whispers turned into quiet conversations. "She's not hiding the child. She speaks like one of us now. If she's strong enough to lead through war, maybe she's strong enough to lead through this." But not everyone wanted change. That night, in the shadows of a broken temple, a secret meeting took place. 7 nobles, 7 blades, and a single plan. End the pregnancy, end the threat. No child, no conflict. They formed a faction called the Linekeepers, sworn to protect Elvari purity at all costs. And they didn't plan to wait. Meanwhile, in the lower cities, Corvin and Varelia stayed in hiding. Only a handful of loyal soldiers knew their exact location. The pregnancy was progressing fast, too fast. "She's growing quickly," Varelia said as she looked at the medical scans. Corvin studied the image of the baby. "Faster than human. Or Elvari growth. She's adapting." He nodded. "It's a girl. I can feel it." Varelia smiled softly. "She kicks harder than a war beast." He smirked. "Takes after her mum." She laughed, but it faded quickly. "We need to decide what happens next. I can't hide forever." "You're not hiding," Corvin said. "You're protecting her." "But for how long?" she asked. "They'll come. You know they will." He looked at her belly, then back into her eyes. "Then we make a stand." The attack came 3 days later. The Linekeepers moved in, silence-masked, armored, and ruthless. They bypassed outer guards using council override codes. They carried stun blades, not for killing Varelia or Corvin, but for ending the unborn child, but they underestimated both of them. The first assassin was caught by the second by Corvin's blade. The third made it to Varelia's door. She opened it, herself. He raised his weapon. She raised her hand and unleashed a shockwave of raw energy from her skin. He flew back across the hallway, slamming into the wall. Unconscious, Corvin ran in seconds later, stunned. "What was that?" Varelia blinked. Her hand trembled. "I don't know." Medical scans the next day showed unusual energy signatures in her bloodstream. Something was happening to her body, something connected to the child. The growing life inside her wasn't just mixing their DNA, it was changing her Sorin, the loyal general, stood before them as their only link to the council now. "I've kept the worst of them away," he said, "but it won't last." "Then it's time," Virelia said. "We won't beg them, we'll show them." "Show them what?" Soren asked. She stood tall, "that our child is not a threat to destroy the Alvari." Corvin stepped beside her, but a chance to save it. They organized a meeting public open, with cameras streaming across Alvari networks. Virelia would speak not just to the nobles, but to every caste, every citizen. On the day of the speech, she wore no armor. Just a flowing robe, hands resting on her belly, with Corvin at her side. She stepped onto the balcony and looked down. At the thousands gathered below, millions watched from across the system. She began. "I was born believing blood makes you better. I was wrong. In war, I saw courage from those with no titles. In love, I found strength in someone they called a savage. And in this child, growing inside me, I see hope. Not impurity, not weakness, hope." She paused as the crowd held its breath. "I will not hide her, I will not be ashamed. She is the future. And if the Alvari cannot accept that, then perhaps the Alvari must change." Some shouted, some wept, and some cheered. For the first time, the bloodline was not the only truth. The day began with a strange stillness. For the first time in months, the skies above Kareth were clear. No smoke, no warships, no drones humming overhead, only peace and anticipation. Inside the medical wing of the Alvari stronghold, Virelia lay in a glowing bed surrounded by soft lights and silent machines. Her breathing was calm, her face focused. Corvin sat beside her, holding her hand tightly. The medics were quiet, respectful not just because she was noble, but because they all knew this birth would change everything. Outside, a silent crowd had gathered. Screens across the system showed a live but shielded broadcast. The council had allowed it, reluctantly, knowing there was no hiding the moment now. People from every Castelvari and human watched together, hope and fear. That's what everyone felt. Inside, the delivery was difficult. Virelia's body had never carried a child before. No Alvari noble had. But she was strong. Stronger than she had ever been in war. And as the final contractions came, she didn't cry out. She breathed deeply and pushed. Corvin held her shoulders, whispering, "You've got this. She's almost here." And then, suddenly, there was silence. Then, a single cry, a high, bright sound that echoed through the room. Like music, the child had arrived. She was unlike anything they had ever seen. Her skin shimmered with a silver glow, soft but alive. Her eyes barely open, flickered between bright blue and deep violet, human and Alvari mixed. Her tiny fingers flexed with unusual strength, and even the medics stepped back in awe. The head physician scanned her vitals. "Her heart is stronger than a full-grown warrior," he whispered. "And her brain activity, it's off the charts." Virelia reached out and took the baby in her arms. Her daughter's warmth flowed into her like a second heartbeat. Looked down, tears building in his eyes. "She's perfect," he said. Virelia smiled, exhausted but proud. "She's ours." The child was named Auriel, a name that meant first light in the ancient Alvari tongue. Within hours, her name spread across Kareth like wildfire. Some called her a blessing, others called her a mistake, but no one could deny it anymore. The future had a name. That night, the council held an emergency session. Elder Vornis was furious. "This child is not a symbol of unity. She is a weapon, a disruption of sacred law." But not all agreed. General Soren stood tall. "I fought beside Corvin. I saw Virelia bleed for us. If that child carries even half their courage, she deserves to live, not hidden, not hunted, but raised among us." The room went silent. Then another elder spoke, quietly perhaps. "It is time we let the people decide." In the days that followed, something unexpected happened. Ordinary Alvari civilians, Hitlers, builders, soldiers began sending gifts, not gold, not power, simple things, clothes, books, Toys, letters of support, even human survivors brought small items, earth songs recorded on old chips, blankets made from Terran cloth. One human child drew a picture of Ariel with wings. Virelia cried when she saw it. Corvin laughed. She doesn't even have teeth, and she already has a fan club. Ariel grew faster than normal. Within just 1 month, she was crawling. Her awareness was sharp. She responded to languages in both tongues. She recognized symbols. One time, she reached out and accidentally activated a nearby drone without touching it. Corvin stared. Stunned. She didn't even touch the console. He whispered. Virelia whispered back. She thinks faster than we can understand, but not everyone had accepted her. The linekeepers, though scattered, were not finished. One of their surviving commanders, hidden in the wastes, sent out a coded message to a banned colony. If the Elvery will not erase the child, then we will. And if the nobles protect her, we will tear the bloodline down. Begin Phase 2. A cold wind returned to Kereth this time, not from warships, but from within. Meanwhile, Virelia and Corvin began preparing. They knew peace would not last forever. They trained again. They mapped exit routes. They created hidden chambers in case they had to flee. But more than that, they raised Oriel with love, with stories, with strength. Every night, Corvin whispered stories of Earth. Every morning, Virelia taught her ancient Elvari melodies, and slowly, the galaxy changed. One tiny hand at a time. The skies above Kereth had been calm for weeks. But pieces fragile like glass waiting to shatter. Late one evening, as the stars glowed over the silver towers of the city, a signal buzzed in one of the outer security towers, faint, distorted, hidden in background. Radiation, most dismissed it as noise. But General Soren did not. He studied it for hours, adjusting frequencies, running to... When the message finally became clear, his blood ran cold. Phase 2 initiated. The child will not live to see her first year. Death wears the face of allies. Virelia stood on the balcony of her high chamber, watching the city lights. Stood behind her, rocking little Ariel in his arms. She giggled softly, playing with the old soldier's beard. Her eyes now glowed with a soft golden hue, beautiful, bright, and mysterious. Virelia turned. She gets stronger every day. Corvin nodded. And we need to be ready for what that brings. He handed Ariel back to her, and stepped forward. The calm won't last. As if the words summoned it, the chamber doors burst open. General Soren entered, face pale. They're coming, he said. From inside, in the deepest levels of the Elvari capital, traitors were moving. The line had never truly disappeared. They had only gone underground. They disguised themselves as servants, advisors, even guards. Now, they were ready. Their mission, capture Ariel, eliminate her quietly, make it look like an accident. They had one advantage, access. But what they didn't know was that Corvin had already seen the signs. His years in war had taught him to smell betrayal before it struck. He met Soren in the secret command room beneath the palace. How many? Corvin asked. At least 9, maybe more. Corvin nodded. I'll deal with them. Soren blinked. Alone? Corvin looked up. No, not alone. That night, the palace dimmed its lights. A false power failure. Meant to draw the traitors out. In the quiet dark, Corvin moved like a ghost. He slipped through the walls, into the tunnels. Past the false guards. The first 2 traitors didn't even see him coming. A flash of a blade. A whisper of breath. Silence. Above, Virelia held Ariel close in the hidden nursery chamber. She didn't cry, she didn't panic, she waited. She was not just a mother. She was a warrior. Below, a linekeeper reached the inner corridor. He held a small dart, launcher fast, silent, deadly. Engineered for Elvari tissue. Meant to stop the heart in seconds. He reached the nursery door. But just as his hand touched the Panahi froze. A red dot glowed on his chest. Then, a voice, drop it. Corvin stepped into the light, blaster in hand. The traitor turned, raising his weapon to slow. Corvin fired, by one shot, one body, no more lies. The failed attack sent shock through the council. Some nobles still supported the old ways, but others had seen too much. Elder Vornus finally broke. You protect that child like she's the future. Varelia stood firm in the council hall. She is the future. Vernus glared. Then may the future defend itself. As if summoned by those very words, Ariel, now crawling faster, thinking sharper, reached out during a routine scan. A council medic screamed as his tablet floated upward. Powered not by tech but by the child's mind, Varelia gasped. Moved it. The room fell silent. Then Corvin said, "No," she commanded it. The whispers began again, but this time they weren't about impurity, they were about power, about evolution. What if the child wasn't a threat? What if she was the next step? Meanwhile, deep in space, far from Elvari eyes, another faction listened. 2 intercepted transmissions, not Elvari, not human, something far older. A hybrid, alive, begin approach. Unknown ships turned toward the Kareth system. This time, not for war, but for collection, back in the capital. Varelia stood at Ariel's cradle, gently brushing the child's glowing hair. She's too powerful for a world like this, she whispered. Corvin stepped behind her, eyes hard. Then we'll build her a world where she never has to hide again. But what neither of them saw was Ariel's small hand reaching out to the security console near her. Bed. It flickered. Responded. She wasn't just growing stronger, she was learning control. The darkness between stars is not empty. Long before the Elvari built their crystal cities, before humans even lit their first fire, others watched. Ancient, cold, patient, they called themselves the Vankai. A species so advanced, they no longer needed bodies, only minds. And now, after millions of years, their attention returned. All because of one child, in the command center of the Kareth defense station. Alarms began to sound. Unidentified ships entering outer orbit, said a young Elvari technician. General Soren leaned over the display. How many? The answer chilled the room. Just one, but it's size of a moon. The screen showed it silent, metallic, pulsing with strange lights. A ship that didn't move through space, but bent it. No weapons activated, no threats given. Just one message: we request the child. In the palace nursery, Varelia held Ariel close, her voice shaking. They knew about her. Corvin paced the room. We were careful. No signals, no open data. How could they have found her? She's not just a child, Varelia whispered. She's something more. Ariel, now standing with wobbly legs, turned toward the window. Her glowing eyes stared into the sky right at the ship, as if she felt it. Corvin moved to the comm unit. Connect me to the command tower. Soren's voice answered. We've received a direct transmission. From them? Yes. It's not in Elvari, not in human code either. Then how did you understand it? Soren hesitated. Because Ariel translated it before we could. Inside the council hall, chaos erupted once again. This is proof, shouted Elder Vornus. She is dangerous. She calls them here. She didn't call them, Varelia snapped back. They were already watching. We just didn't know. Another elder whispered. What if she's their creation? No, Corvin said. She's ours, but maybe she's the bridge. Later, a meeting was set, not with the council. With the Vankai, a single figure appeared through a glowing gate outside. The capital, a projection made of light and shifting form. No face, no body, just a floating shape. Everyone froze. It spoke in a voice that echoed in every mind, in every language at once. We are the Vankai. We watched the rise and fall of stars. We once seeded life across systems, and from one such seed, your child was born. Varelia stepped forward, calm but fierce. What do you want with her? We wish to study, we wish to preserve, we wish to take her. Corvan's hand moved to his sidearm. You're not taking anything. The Vankai form pulsed. You misunderstand. We do not seek to harm her. She is the first successful convergence of two conflicting bloodlines. She holds something long lost, even to us. What does she hold? Varelia demanded. The ability to create balance where there was once division. You call it unity. We call it the return. The figure looked at Ariel, who had walked calmly to the front of the room. She stared up at the light being, blinking, unafraid. Then she raised her hand, and the Vankai form shimmered all across the defense grid. Energy levels dropped, lights dimmed, machines stopped, but Ariel glowed brighter. She's draining them, Soren gasped. No, Corvin said slowly. She's communicating. Then Ariel spoke. Just one word. No, the Vankai trembled. We understand. The choice is hers, and she has chosen to remain. The being vanished in a pulse of light. The silence afterward was unreal. The council, the soldiers, even Corvin and Varelia. They all looked at the little girl standing calmly in the middle of the room. No tantrum, no tears, just calm power. Knelt Iriel. What did they show you? Iriel spoke softly, her voice clearer than before. I saw what they were. I saw what we could be, but I'm not theirs. I'm yours. That night, a storm rolled in across the city. Not of rain or lightning, but questions. Who else was watching? What other secrets did Ariel carry in her blood? And most importantly, would the galaxy accept a child who had just refused the oldest power in the universe? Corvin stood at the window as wind howled through the trees. Varelia wrapped a blanket around Oriel and laid her to sleep. She's only a few months old, Varelia whispered, and already she's faced more than we ever did. Corvin nodded, and she hasn't even begun yet. In the void of space, far beyond what even Vankai could track, something else stirred. Something darker, something watching from shadows deeper than starlight. The hybrid exists. The Vankai failed. Then we will not. A new danger moved closer. Not for study, not for peace, but for eradication. Asterisk, in the far reaches of the galaxy, where stars are born and die in silence. A shadow moved. No light could touch it. No life could withstand it. They were known only by whispers, the Eredrex, ancient, cruel, and filled with hatred for anything that mixed bloodlines. They believed in purity, control, and order. And when they learned of Ariel, they decided she had to be destroyed, not studied, not warned, erased. The first signs came quietly. Satellites around Kareth began failing one by one. Defense sensors picked up nothing. And yet something was out there, watching, waiting. Then came the message, and to deep space using radiation. The abomination must not rise. In the palace, Varelia stood with Soren, reviewing the data. Her hands were steady, but her voice held steel. We've faced war before, she said. This is no different. Soren looked grim. This is worse. The Eredrex don't fight for land or power. They destroy anything that threatens their idea of perfection. And Ariel is the greatest threat they've ever seen, said Corvin. Entering the room, he carried his armor in one hand. The other hand rested on his sidearm. She's the future, he said, and they want to bury it. In her private room, Iriel stood by the window, staring into the stars again. She didn't speak. She didn't cry, but her eyes shimmered brighter than ever, gold and violet. Glowing softly in the dark, Varelia knelt beside her. Do you feel them, little one? Ariel nodded slowly. They're scared. Of you? Ariel turned her head. Yes. The Eredrex fleet appeared 2 days later. Over 30 ships, black as space, sharp as blades, no communication. Number warning, just a single universal message. Surrender the child, or we will turn your world to ash. The Elvery Council gathered in panic. Some wanted to negotiate, some wanted to run, but Varelia stood before them, tall and calm. You don't understand, she said. Ariel isn't a weapon we hold. She is a voice the galaxy needs. If we hand her over, we don't just lose her, we lose who we've become. One counselor asked, then what do we do? Corvin stepped forward. We fight. Ariel stood between them. No longer just a child. She was walking, thinking, speaking, clearly far ahead of her age. Her presence calmed those around her. Even the soldiers, hardened by war, felt peace in her gaze. "I won't run," she said softly. Varelia blinked. "You understand. I see it all," Ariel replied. "Their fear, their hate, and their weakness." "What's their weakness?" Corvin asked. "They believe nothing can change," she said. "But I already did." Together, they prepared. The city activated its ancient shields. Every Elvari soldier, and even human survivors who had stayed, gathered arms. Corvin led tactical drills. Varelia commanded the fleet formations, and Ariel began to shape energy with her hands. Not technology, not magic, something new, something alive. The Aerodrex attacked at dawn. They didn't speak. They didn't offer deals, they fired. The sky turned red, ships fell, towers broke, but Kareth held. Corvin led strike teams to board enemy dropships. Varelia launched precision attacks from orbit. And in the heart of the palace, Ariel stood still, eyes closed. Then she raised both hands, and the city lit up. Not just with weapons, but with something else. A field of energy so pure, so powerful, that even the Aerodrex taken breakable for centuries collapsed across the battlefield. Ships froze, weapons jammed, the enemy faltered. Ariel stepped forward, now glowing from head to toe. Her voice echoed across the city. "You fear what I am. But I am what comes next. You cannot erase the future." And then she released it. A wave of golden light. The Aerodrex screamed not from pain, but from collapse. Their systems fell apart. Their minds fractured. They were not just being stopped, they were being undone. In moments, the enemy fleet retreated. The survivors fled back into the darkness, their pride shattered, their codes broken. No one had ever defeated them, until Auriel. In the quiet after the battle, the people of Kerith gathered. Elvari. Even those who once hated, they stood together, surrounding the child at the center of it all. She smiled, small and innocent again. Varelia picked her up and whispered, "You did it." "No," Ariel said, "we did it." That night, Corvin sat beside the fire, watching stars return to the sky. Varelia joined him. "She saved us," she said. Corvin looked at her. "No, you saved us. You believed in her before anyone else." She smiled. "I mocked you once." He grinned. "And now you're the mother of the strongest being in the galaxy." Varelia looked out into the stars. "I wouldn't trade it for anything." But far beyond Kerith, something darker stirred. Not Aerodrex, not Vankai, something that had slept for eons now. It had noticed her. Asterisk. It had been 7 days since the Aerodrex retreated. 7 days of silence, no more battles, no more alarms, just rebuilding, healing, and watching Ariel with new eyes. She was only a few months old, but she stood tall like a child twice her age. Her speech was perfect. Her understanding was beyond genius. And wherever she walked, light followed. In the center of the capital, a new statue was being carved, not of a war hero, not of a noble, but of a child. A child born from two worlds. A child who changed everything. Corvin sat beside the garden pool, sharpening an old knife. Not because he needed it, but because the motion reminded him of simpler times. Varelia joined him. Barefoot in the grass, her robes soft and light. "You still carry that thing," she teased. "It's not for fighting anymore," Corvin said. "It's for remembering." They sat in silence for a while. Then she asked, "Do you think she have a normal life?" He looked up at the sky. "No, but I think she'll have a good one." In a nearby hall, elders met again, this time. Not to debate Ariel's right to exist, but to discuss her future. "She is more than just a child," one elder said. "She is knowledge we cannot teach. Energy we cannot control." Varelia entered the room. "She doesn't need to be controlled," she said. "She needs to be trusted." Another elder asked, "And if more like her are born?" Corvin stood behind her. "Then your world just got a lot bigger. Time to grow with it." That evening, Ariel stood on a quiet balcony, looking at the stars again. She held a stone in one hand and an HFY flute in the other. She was building something, shaping energy around both objects, making them float in a perfect circle. Corvin approached slowly. "What are you doing, little one?" She smiled, listening. "To what?" She pointed upward. "The ones who are coming." Far away beyond the known stars, something else stirred, not dark, not evil, but ancient. A voice older than time echoed across the void. "A convergence child has awakened. Prepare the gates. The age of division ends. The age of blending begins." Back on Kareth, ships from other species began to arrive. Races who once feared both humans and Elvari now sent envoys. Word had spread across systems. A child had stood against extinction. A child had turned back the Eridrex. A child was not a threat but a promise. Virilia and Corvin sat with Ariel in a quiet circle of trees. Her fingers played soft music from the Elvari flute, and the trees around them gently swayed, not from wind, but from energy. "People will come," Corvin said. "Some to learn, some to follow, some to take." "I know," Ariel said. Virilia asked, "Are you ready?" Turned to them both. "I'm never alone. I have you." The next morning, a massive crowd stood beneath the city's tallest tower. Virilia stepped forward first. "Once, I mocked what I did not understand. I believed blood made someone worthy. But blood means nothing without heart, without courage, without love." Corvin followed. "I was called unworthy. I was treated as less, but I gave everything I had, and in the end, I earned something no title could give a family." Then Ariel stepped between them. She didn't speak with power, she didn't command, she simply opened her hands, and from her palms, a tree of golden light grew, rising high, pulsing with life, casting soft warmth over everyone. No words, no weapons, just light. And understanding. The people fell to their knees, not in worship, but in wonder. They weren't looking at a goddess, they were looking at hope. That night, the stars glowed brighter than ever. Ships hovered in orbit, peaceful. The land had disbanded. The Vankai watched from afar, choosing to protect from a distance. Even the Erid had gone silent. Because they now understood, the child was not a threat. She was the bridge. Virilia placed her hand on Corvan's. "She changed everything," she whispered. Corvan looked at her and smiled. "No," he said. "You did. You chose me when no one else would. And she's the proof that your choice was right." She leaned her head on his shoulder, and together, they watched their daughter create a new world.